For British criminals during the Victorian era, there was only one place worse than dingy cells or horrific jails. These were known as prison hulks, which were decommissioned ships that could float though were not seaworthy. All masts and means of sailing were removed from prison hulks to solve the immense challenge of finding places for housing an overflow of criminals on the mainland. Hulks were thought to be a cheap alternative to building prisons on land while having the advantages of mobility and available capacity. Though for the convicts inside these prison ships, they would soon regret any crimes they performed which sentenced them to these floating nightmares. The use of prison hulks for detaining criminals in English ports and harbours began in the year 1776 under a new Act of Parliament. Initially designed to be a temporary measure, the use of hulks lasted over 80 years through various extensions. Then, in 1857, the Act was allowed to expire with no extensions. At this time, officials recognized that prison hulks were difficult to manage as well as the various dangers presented by housing convicts in such confined quarters. During the age of British prison hulks, these decommissioned ships were located in areas such as Woolwich, Portsmouth, and the River Thames. Hundreds of convicts would be housed in each prison hulk. For instance, a prison ship named the Warrior held 600 prisoners at Woolwich Port aboard 3 decks. Though on average, prison hulks held between 200 to 300 prisoners. To give further insight into life aboard a prison hulk during the Victorian period, we shall continue with an 1846 account describing the Warrior. Life aboard a prison hulk. The upper deck of the Warrior housed 124, the middle deck 192, and the lower deck 284 convicts. Below this level would be the ship's hold, used primarily for storage. Each prison ship had an overseer, who kept a register or book detailing all convicts occupying their particular hulk. An overseer was also responsible for administering night watch on the hulk. On the first Sunday of every quarter, all convicts aboard would be mustered, with their behavior over the previous 3 months individually assessed. A prisoner's conduct would be classified as very good, good, indifferent, bad, or very bad, with the judgment noted beside each name in the prisoner roll. An occurrence book was also kept for infractions of rules by convicts. It is interesting to note the age of convicts on prison hulks was between 8 and 80 years. After being classed, the convicts were contained within separate compartments or cells which were numbered consecutively, starting at the lower deck and progressing upwards. They were restricted from socializing with any other class other than their own after performing daily labor. Their conditions were often overcrowded and disease-ridden, with little to no ventilation to prevent escape through portholes or similar areas. A prisoner began their day at 5 a.m., washing in large water troughs or with buckets before putting on their clothes. Hard labor would follow on various tasks according to the health of the prisoner until 5:30 p.m. Depending on the time of year, daily labor was between 8 and 9.5 hours each day. When a prisoner was permitted to earn money from their labor, 1/3 of these wages would be taken to pay for their food, and at no time would they be allowed to have money in their possession. The remainder of these wages would be reserved for prisoners that passed 2 years of their sentence with no punishment or misconduct. In the early years of using prison hulks, 1 in 3 convicts died during their stay, though in later years that decreased to 1 in 10. The main cause of these high mortality rates were diseases prisoners contracted while living in these unsanitary conditions like dysentery and tuberculosis. Your chances for survival were also influenced by the location of your confinement. The worst characters were housed in the lowest levels, where your chances for survival were diminished compared to the upper deck. As you progressed to higher levels, where prisoners became of a better character, there was less disease and a better climate than the damp and poor ventilation in the lower deck. There was a surgeon assigned to each vessel to care for the health of these convicts. However, their administration was considered in many cases inadequate and of a basic standard. Horrible prison food. Low-quality food, inadequate for a proper adult male diet, consisted of regular portions of ox cheek, either boiled or put into stew, pea soup, and bread or biscuit, which was often moldy. Twice a week the meat was substituted for oatmeal porridge, bread, and cheese. 2 pints of beer was rationed 4 days each week, and poor quality drinking water came from the polluted harbors on which these ships floated. Depending on the goodwill of those in charge, prisoners would occasionally be permitted to plant vegetables on land plots near the floating ships to complement this extremely poor diet. There was an area aboard these hulks for prisoners to relieve human waste. Located at the front of the ship, where the bow thrusts outwards into the beakhead, were platform seats with holes used as toilets. Otherwise known as the heads, it was designed for waste to drop directly into the water below and avoid the sides of the vessel. Today, we know the vast majority of Victorians were working class people whose daily existence was a fierce fight for basic necessities. Therefore, prisoners of the day would have an even greater difficulty trying to survive. So, in the opinion of many, it is almost unimaginable to think of the life and death struggle aboard a decaying prison hulk during the Victorian era. Thank you for watching this episode of the Victorian Diary. We show regular episodes which reveal life in the Victorian age. So please remember to like, subscribe, share, and reveal this knowledge of Victorian times for the benefit of everyone.